The darkness between stars held secrets that most civilizations would never discover. And the Veil Collective preferred it that way for 50,000 years. They had moved through the galaxy like ghosts, their ships bending light around their hulls with such perfection that no living eyes had ever glimpsed their true forms. Kethver stood in the observation chamber of the flagship Whisper of Eternity, his elongated fingers dancing across holographic displays that showed him everything while revealing nothing of his presence. Another primitive species? His second-in-command, Volsha remarked, a voice carrying the musical quality common to their kind. Perhaps, Kethver replied, studying the blue-green world rotating slowly on his screens, but their radio transmissions suggest unusual complexity. The Veil had perfected the art of watching without being watched there. Technology didn't just make them invisible to electromagnetic radiation, it made them undetectable across virtually every spectrum known to science. Gravitational signatures were dampened to negligible levels. Heat dispersed through quantum channels into distant parts of space. And even their matter left no more impression on reality than a passing thought. They had observed the rise and fall of hundreds of civilizations, documenting everything, interfering with nothing. It was their way, their code. Their purpose, the human homeworld called Earth, hung before them now, its cities glittering in the night like bioluminescent organisms in a dark ocean. Kethver had reviewed the preliminary reports with growing interest. These humans had split the atom, ventured to their moon, and filled their orbit with thousands of satellites, yet they remained confined to their single star system, still fighting among themselves, still struggling with the basic questions of existence. Deploy the observation grid, Kethver ordered. Standard protocol, 6 ships in geosynchronous orbit. 3 for deep system monitoring, 2 for satellite surveillance. The Veil vessels moved into position with the silence of shadows. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering, its surface not merely invisible, but actively erasing its presence from the universe. To any observer, the space they occupied would appear exactly as it should, empty, unremarkable, ordinary on Earth. Dr. Sarah Chun sat in her small observatory outside of Pasadena, making adjustments to her telescope with practiced hands. She had been an amateur astronomer for 20 years, ever since her father had first shown her the rings of Saturn through a borrowed scope. Now she taught astrophysics at the university by day and chased her own research projects by night. She was cataloging faint objects in high orbit, part of a citizen science project tracking space debris. Her telescope swept across the sky in a predetermined pattern, the computer logging coordinates and brightness values automatically. Then, something made her pause. It wasn't something she saw, it was something she felt. The hair on the back of her neck prickled with an awareness she couldn't quite explain. Sarah frowned and manually adjusted the telescope, pointing it at a region of space that her instrument said contained absolutely nothing. She increased the exposure time, stacking multiple images to bring out the faintest possible details. Still nothing, yet the feeling persisted. That's weird, she muttered to herself, making a note in her observation log. 300 kilometers above her head, aboard the Whisper of Eternity, Kethver watched the human woman redirect her primitive telescope toward his ship's exact position. Coincidence? Velsha said, but her tone carried uncertainty. Calculate the probability. Kethver commanded the ships. Analytical systems processed the request in microseconds. The probability of random chance is 0.003%. The computer announced. Kethver felt a flutter of concern in his chest, an emotion the Veil rarely experienced in all their thousands of years of observation across hundreds of worlds. No one had ever looked directly at them, not once. Continue monitoring that individual, he ordered. Flag any further anomalous behavior across the planet. Other humans were beginning to notice things as well, Commander Marcus. Webb of the Earth Defense Coalition stood in the command center beneath Cheyenne Mountain, studying a report that made no sense. "Run it again," he told his sensor technician. "Sir, we've run it 6 times. The young officer replied, "The gravitational fluctuations are real, but they don't correspond to any known objects." Webb leaned over the display, examining the data with eyes trained to spot the impossible. The sensors showed tiny variations in local gravity, microsecond-level distortions that appeared and disappeared in a pattern that seemed almost deliberate. Could it be a software glitch? "We've checked the code, sir. It's clean. Natural phenomena? Nothing in the database matches this signature." Webb straightened, his jaw tightening. He had spent 30 years in the Defense Forces. The last 10 focused specifically on potential threats from beyond Earth. The official position was that humanity was alone in the universe, or at least alone in any practical sense, but Webb had never quite believed that. "Classify this as priority watch," he said quietly. "I want continuous monitoring and correlation with all other sensor platforms, civilian and military. Sir, if we do that, we'll have to file a formal report." "Then file it," Webb interrupted. "Something is out there, and I want to know what it is." Back in her observatory, Sarah Chun was still puzzling over the empty space that didn't feel empty. She had switched to different wavelengths: infrared, ultraviolet, even radio, but everything showed the same result: nothing. Yet her instincts, honed by decades of careful observation, screamed that something was wrong with that particular patch of sky. She decided to try something different instead of looking for what was there. She began analyzing what should be there, but wasn't. Stars should be visible in that region. There are light traveling across light years to reach Earth. She pulled up a star catalog and began cross-referencing. 12 hours later, she sat back with a sharp intake of breath. 3 stars that should be clearly visible in that exact location were either dimmer than they should be or had subtle color shifts in their spectra. It was as if something was in the way, something that wasn't quite perfectly invisible. "Oh my God," she whispered aboard the Vale flagship. Alarms began to chime softly. "Report," Keffer demanded. "The human female has initiated spectroscopic analysis of background stars," Vasha said, her musical voice tight with tension. "She's attempting to detect us through occlusion." Keffer's 4 eyes widened. Occlusion detection was a theoretical possibility they had considered, but no species had ever been sophisticated enough or persistent enough to attempt it on a practical level. How accurate is her methodology? Crude but theoretically sound, given enough time and processing power. She could map our position to within a few hundred meters. Keffer made a decision: adjust our position by 500 kilometers, maintain stealth protocols, but move out of her current observation cone. The ship shifted silently through space back on Earth. Sarah watched in amazement as the anomaly she had been tracking simply vanished. The stars returned to their proper brightness and color. She sat frozen, her mind racing through possibilities. Either she had been wrong about everything, or she had been absolutely right, and whatever she had found could move. She reached for her phone with trembling hands. Whatever was up there, she wasn't going to keep it to herself. The game, though neither side knew it yet, had already begun. The message reached Commander Webb's desk at 04:00 hours, forwarded through 3 different departments before someone recognized its significance. Sarah Chan's preliminary report outlined her observations with scientific precision, but Webb could read between the lines. She believed something artificial was in Earth's orbit, something that could actively hide itself. "Get me everything we have on Dr. Chun," Webb ordered his aide, "and pull up all sensor data from her observation window. I want gravity, electromagnetic, thermal, everything, within an hour." He had confirmation that made his blood run cold. 6 different monitoring stations had recorded unexplained fluctuations during the exact time frame of Chun's observations. The anomalies were subtle, barely above the threshold of detection, but they were there, and they had moved. Cather reviewed the situation reports with growing unease. The Veil Council, receiving updates from across their observation fleet, had begun expressing concern about the human detection capabilities. Recommend we withdraw from the system, Valsha suggested. Our mission protocols allow for discretionary retreat if stealth is compromised. Stealth has not been compromised, Kethver countered. One scientist made a lucky observation. We adjusted our position and the problem resolved itself. But the humans are now actively looking, Valsha pressed. Their sensor networks are coordinating, sharing data across their entire planetary defense grid. Kethver pulled up the latest intelligence. She was right. Human communications traffic had increased dramatically, with multiple government and civilian organizations suddenly focusing resources on orbital monitoring. They're calling us ghost ships, he said, reading translated transmissions with something approaching admiration. They've even started creating predictive models for where we might appear next. How is that possible? Valsha asked. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Perhaps? Kethver mused. But they're using methods we never anticipated. They're not trying to see us directly, but rather detecting the holes we leave in their observations. The Veil had always assumed that perfect invisibility was enough. They had never considered that an absence of data could itself become data. Chun's paper hit the scientific community like a thunderbolt published in an open-access journal after being rejected by more prestigious publications. Her work outlined a theoretical framework for detecting camouflaged extraterrestrial observers through indirect means within 24 hours. It had been downloaded over 1 million times within 48 hours. Amateur astronomers around the world were replicating her methods. This is insane, her colleague Dr. Robert Martinez said, bursting into her office. You're being called everything from a genius to a conspiracy theorist. The university board wants to meet with you. Sarah looked up from her computer, where she was analyzing the latest reports from citizen scientists. Let them call me whatever they want. Robert looked at this data. She turned her screen toward him. 37 independent observers in 16 countries have all detected the same anomalies and their forming patterns. Martinez leaned in, his skepticism warring with the evidence before his eyes. This looks like a fleet deployment pattern. Sarah finished. Whatever they are, they're organized, and they're watching us aboard the Whisperer of Eternity. The mood had shifted from confidence to anxiety. We have a crisis, Valsha announced at the senior staff meeting. Human sensor networks have achieved a 73% detection rate over the past 48 hours. Kethver studied the tactical display with the concentration of a predator suddenly finding itself. Prey-red markers indicated confirmed human detection events. Yellow showed probable detections, and green represented areas where Veil stealth remained effective. There was far too much red. How did they advance so quickly? He asked. Their computational systems are linking observations from thousands of sources, the tactical officer explained. They're using artificial intelligence to pattern match across multiple sensor types simultaneously. We've never encountered this approach before. They're also using quantum entangled particles, another officer added. Experimental systems that paint space with markers we cannot completely mask. Kethver felt the weight of history pressing down on him. 50,000 years of perfect concealment, and it was unraveling in mere days. The council is demanding an explanation, Valsha said quietly. They want to know how a species that hasn't even mastered faster-than-light travel has defeated our stealth technology. Because we underestimated them, Kethver replied. We assumed that technological sophistication was the only relevant metric. We didn't account for creativity, desperation, or the unique evolutionary pressures that shaped their development. He pulled up a file on human history, scrolling through millennia of warfare, competition, and survival. They evolved on a world filled with predators and prey, including each other, and they learned to see patterns, to detect deception, to find what others tried to hide. And now they're turning those skills on us. Velsha finished. The breaking point came on the 7th day of observation. A junior Veil scout named Rethanol, monitoring satellite networks near Mars, made a critical error. His ship's stealth field generator developed a microfracture, and in attempting to repair it while remaining invisible, he created a cascade failure. The electromagnetic burst that resulted was visible across half the solar system. Commander Webb was in a meeting when the alerts started screaming. Every sensor platform from Earth to the asteroid belt had detected the same thing, a massive energy signature near Mars that appeared, blazed like a newborn star for 0.3 seconds, and then vanished. "Tell me that was natural," he said to his senior analyst. "Sir, that was definitely not natural. The energy profile matches nothing in our database, but the signature is consistent with a catastrophic containment failure of an unknown technology." Webb stood, his decision already made. "Activate Operation Lighthouse. I want every detection system we have focused on near-Earth space, and I want them running continuously." "Sir, that's going to use up most of our power budget." "Do it," Webb ordered, "and send a message to Dr. Chun. Tell her I want her consulting on this." Effective immediately, the Veil Council convened an emergency session. Kether stood before the assembled leaders, his posture respectful but his voice firm. "We can no longer maintain pure observation protocols," he said. "The humans have detected us, and they are rapidly improving their capabilities. Within another week, they will be able to track our movements in real time. Then we withdraw." Council leader Zethrim declared, "We return to deep space and observe from a safe distance. With respect, Elder, that may no longer be an option." Kepher replied, "The humans are transmitting our detection data across their entire communications network. If we flee now, we confirm our presence and our intentions remain unknown to them." "What are you suggesting?" Kepher took a breath, knowing his next words would change everything. "I suggest we reveal ourselves. We make first contact on our terms, before they force the issue on theirs." The chamber erupted in protest. For 50,000 years, the Veil had maintained their perfect secret, watching civilizations rise and fall without ever stepping onto the stage themselves. "This is madness," Zethrim said. "We do not reveal ourselves. It is not our way. Our way assumed we would never be found." Kethver countered, "That assumption is no longer valid." The debate raged for hours, but in the end, Kethver's logic prevailed. The humans had done what no other species had managed. They had found the unfindable. No, both sides stood at a crossroads. One could retreat into darkness and be forever labeled as spies and potential enemies, or they could step into the light and face whatever came next. Idava returned to his ship and began composing a message. It would be the first intentional communication the Veil Collective had ever sent to another species. His hands trembled slightly as he worked, not from fear, but from the magnitude of the moment. 50,000 years of watching in silence, ended by a species that refused to accept that empty space was ever truly empty. The detection grid went live at 1300 hours Greenwich Mean Time, and for the first time in human history, the species could see beyond the veil of normal space. Commander Webb stood in the command center, surrounded by screens showing data from gravity wave sensors in orbit, thermal imaging satellites scanning for the absence of expected background radiation, and AI systems that have been taught to recognize patterns that shouldn't exist. Contact, A technician called out. Multiple contacts. I'm reading 6 distinct gravitational anomalies in geosynchronous orbit, 3 in the outer system, and 2 tracking our satellite networks. Webb felt his heart hammering against his ribs. 11 ships. There were 11 invisible alien ships in their solar system, and now humanity could see them all. Prepare warning buoys, he ordered. I want them deployed in a loose perimeter around each detected position. Make it clear we know they're there. Dr. Sarah Chun stood beside him. Her face pale but determined. The university had granted her emergency leave to consult with the defense forces, and she had jumped at the chance. This is really happening, she whispered. We're not alone. We never were. Webb replied, we just didn't know it until now. The warning buoys launched from 3 different orbital platforms. Small satellites equipped with powerful transmitters, broadcasting a simple message in multiple languages and mathematical formats. We know you are there. Reveal yourselves peacefully, or we will consider you hostile. This is your only warning. Aboard the Whisper of Eternity, Kethver watched the human buoys take position around his ship with a mixture of respect and resignation. The Council's permission had come. Through an hour earlier, he was authorized to make first contact under strict protocols. They've given us an ultimatum, Velsha observed. A bold move for a species that cannot yet leave its own star system. Bold or desperate, Kethver said. Perhaps both in any case. They've earned the right to see us. He moved to the command station and initiated the sequence he had hoped never to use around the Whisper of Eternity. The stealth field that had hidden it from the universe for decades began to collapse. Light that had been carefully bent around the hull now struck it naturally. Heat that had been shunted to distant parts of space now radiated. Normally, the ship that had been invisible became visible on Earth. Every sensor pointed at that region of space suddenly recorded something where nothing had been before a vessel appeared. Its form elegant and alien, its surface shimmering with colors that human eyes had never seen. It was 300 meters long, shaped like a teardrop made of liquid starlight. And it was the most beautiful thing Sarah had ever witnessed. Oh my God, she breathed. They're real. They're really real. Commander Webb was already moving, barking orders. Get me a channel to every head of state. This is first contact, and everyone needs to see it. Activate all first contact protocols immediately, within minutes. The news had spread across Earth. Billions of humans stopped what they were doing and turned their attention to the skis. Kethvar's message went out on all frequencies, translated by Veil systems into every major human language simultaneously. People of Earth, I am Kethver, expedition leader of the Veil Collective. We have observed your world for many cycles of your planet around your star, studying your development from a distance, as is our practice. You are the first species in our 50,000 years of observation to detect our presence. We seek peaceful dialogue and understanding. The response came not from any single government, but from Commander Webb, speaking on behalf of Earth's hastily assembled First Contact Committee, Kethver of the Veil Collective. This is Commander Marcus Webb of Earth Defense Coalition. Your observation of our world, without permission or contact, is concerning. We demand to know your intentions, and we require face-to-face negotiations at a neutral location. Sarah listened to the exchange with growing excitement. This was history being made in real time. 2 species from different worlds speaking to each other across the void. Kethver agreed to the meeting, and within 48 hours, a neutral space station was being assembled at the L5 Lagrange point between Earth and the Moon. It was a joint construction effort, with human modules launched from Earth and Veil technology providing shielding and life support. The station was small, barely large enough for a conference room and basic facilities, but it represented something unprecedented: common ground between 2 species that had existed in ignorance of each other until days ago the first meeting took place. Under the watchful eyes of Billion Skethva, entered the human-built conference room with Velsha and two other Veil advisors. The Veil were tall and slender, their skin an iridescent blue-green that shifted in the light. With 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on their elongated faces, Commander Webb led the human delegation, with Dr. Chun and representatives from 12 different nations. The moment stretched as both sides regarded each other, taking in the reality of alien intelligence made manifest. "You're taller than I expected," Sarah said, breaking the silence with a nervous laugh. Cathverse translator rendered his response with what might have been amusement. "And you are more perceptive than we anticipated. Please, let us sit and talk." The negotiations began with formalities, each side presenting credentials and establishing basic rules of engagement. But as the hours passed, the conversation became more direct. "We must understand," Cathver said finally, his 4 eyes fixing on Sarah. "How did you find us? Our stealth technology has never failed. We have observed species far more advanced than yours without detection." Sarah leaned forward, her scientific excitement overriding her diplomatic caution. "You made yourselves invisible to light and most electromagnetic radiation, correct? You dampened your gravitational signature and dispersed your heat across quantum channels?" "Precisely," Cathver confirmed. "Then you were thinking about the problem from the wrong direction," Sarah explained. "You focused on not being seen. We focused on seeing without looking." She pulled up a display showing the human detection methods. "We use gravity wave sensors to detect the micro distortions your ships create in space-time, no matter how well dampened. Mass still affects gravity. We use neutrino detectors to spot the shadows you cast in the background. Neutrino flux that permeates space, we analyzed. The cosmic microwave background for temperature fluctuations caused by your presence. But most importantly," Commander Webb added, "we looked for what should be there but wasn't stars that were dimmer than they should be. Radiation patterns that were disrupted, quantum vacuum fluctuations that didn't match the baseline." Cathver sat back, his posture conveying something like astonishment. "You developed all of these technologies in the past few years?" "Some of them were developed for other purposes," Webb explained. "Gravity wave detectors for studying black holes, neutrino detectors for particle physics, quantum sensors for computing. We just repurposed them for detection when Dr. Chen gave us a reason to look." "But why are you so skilled at indirect detection?" Velsha asked. "What evolutionary pressure created this capability?" Sarah and Webb exchanged a glance. "We learned to spot what doesn't belong because we spent thousands of years trying to hide from each other," Sarah said quietly. "Camouflage, deception, stealth, these weren't alien concepts to us. They were survival skills. Our species evolved as both predator and prey." Webb continued. "We learned to see through deception because failing to do so meant death. We learned to recognize patterns because patterns reveal intent." Cathver was silent for a long moment, processing this information. The Veil had spent 50,000 years perfecting invisibility, but they had done so in a galaxy where most species never thought to question what they couldn't see. Humans had spent their entire existence questioning everything. "There is something else you should know," Cathver said finally. "Our database contains records of other species that may have detected our presence over the millennia, but they never acted on their suspicions. Never challenged us, never demanded contact. Why not?" Sarah asked. "Fear," Cathver replied. "They detected something beyond their understanding and chose to pretend they hadn't. You are the first species to not only find us but to confront us." Commander Webb smiled grimly. "That's humanity for you. We don't do well with leaving mysteries unsolved or challenges unmet." The meeting continued deep into the night, with both sides sharing information and establishing the groundwork for future relations as Kethver prepared to return to his ship. He paused and looked at the human delegation with something approaching respect. We believed we were the Watchers, the observers who stood apart from the universe, he said. You have taught us that there is no standing apart. There is only being seen or being unseen. And you have chosen to see, Sarah smiled. Welcome to being visible. Kethver, we think you'll find it's not so bad once you get used to it. The Veil leader departed, his ship shimmering back into partial visibility as a gesture of good faith back on Earth. Humanity celebrated its first contact with an alien species, but in the shadows of space. Others were watching the Watchers being watched, and not all of them were pleased. The cultural exchange program began 3 weeks after first contact, with Veil observers embedding themselves in human research facilities and human scientists traveling aboard Veil ships to study their technology. Dr. Sarah Chun found herself aboard the Whisper of Eternity. Surrounded by technology that seemed like magic wrapped in physics she could barely comprehend. This is incredible, she said, watching Velsha demonstrate their stealth field generator. The way you manipulate quantum states to redirect photons. We theorized something like this was possible, but we're decades away from implementation. And yet, you defeated it, Velsha replied, her tone carrying genuine curiosity. I still do not fully understand how. Would you walk me through your detection methodology again? Sarah pulled up her portable computer and began explaining the sensor fusion approach that had cracked Veil's invisibility as she spoke. More Veil scientists gathered, their 4 eyes wide with fascination. You see, Sarah explained, pointing to a complex graph. We weren't trying to see your ships directly. We were looking for the ripples they created in everything around them, like a fish beneath the surface of water. Kethver observed, joining the group. You cannot see the fish, but you can see the disturbance it creates. Exactly, Sarah said, and once we knew what kind of ripples to look for, we could predict where you would be and what you would do. Junior Veil scientist named Pethker spoke up hesitantly. But your computational systems are primitive compared to ours. How did you process so much data so quickly? Sarah grinned. That's where human creativity comes in. We didn't try to analyze everything perfectly. We taught our AI systems to recognize patterns that were weird, and then we investigated those weird spots. Weird? Velsha repeated, the translator struggling with the concept. Anomalous, Sarah clarified. Out of place, unexpected. Inconsistent with background norms. Our pattern recognition evolved to spot social deception. So we're really good at noticing when something doesn't fit. Kethver pulled up the Veil database and displayed it for Sarah. We have records spanning 50,000 years. He said 847 different species observed across the galaxy. Of those, we now believe at least 70 may have detected our presence at some point. Sarah leaned forward, her scientific mind racing. But you said we were the first to actually confront you. What happened to the other 70? They chose to ignore what they found, Kethver explained. Some convinced themselves they were mistaken. Others decided that confirming our existence was too dangerous. And still others simply lacked the cultural framework to act on their discoveries. He highlighted several species in the database. The Karathi detected gravitational anomalies similar to what you found. But their religious authorities declared it forbidden knowledge. The Zenti actually developed better sensors than yours, but their government suppressed the findings. To avoid public panic, the Vril came closest to your achievement, but they were a prey species by evolution and chose to hide rather than confront the unknown. But humans didn't do any of those things, Sarah said softly. Why not? Commander Webb, who had been listening from across the room, answered. because we're stubborn, curious, and we've spent our entire history being told something was impossible right before. We went and did it anyway. He walked over to join the conversation. Every major advancement in human civilization came from someone questioning what everyone else accepted as truth. We didn't invent fire by accepting that darkness was natural. We didn't reach the moon by accepting that space was unreachable. Your species also evolved in constant conflict. Velsha observed. Your detection capabilities arose from military necessity. True, Webb admitted. We developed stealth technology to hide from each other, which meant we also had to develop detection technology to find each other. It's been an arms race for thousands of years. An arms race that prepared you to find us, Kethver said. Unintentionally. Yes, but there's another factor, Sarah interjected. Human sensory perception is actually pretty limited compared to most species. We can't see in infrared or ultraviolet without tools. Our hearing range is narrow, and our sense of smell is terrible. How is this an advantage? Pethker asked, confused. Because we learned to extend our senses through technology very early in our development. Sarah explained. We've been building tools to see what we can't see naturally for thousands of years. Telescopes, microscopes, sensors, detectors. We don't trust our biological senses alone. She pulled up another display showing the network of human detection systems. When you arrived, we already had thousands of satellites, sensors, and monitoring stations scattered across near-Earth space, all designed to detect different things: gravitational waves, electromagnetic radiation, particle streams, thermal signatures. We weren't looking for you specifically, but we had the tools in place to find you when you showed up. Kethver studied the human sensor network with growing appreciation. You created a web of observation that covered multiple spectrums simultaneously. Our stealth was optimized for individual detection methods, but not for this kind of comprehensive, overlapping approach. Exactly, Webb said. No single sensor found you. It was the combination, the fusion of all our different detection methods working together, that revealed your presence, and the artificial intelligence systems that process the data. Sarah added, we taught them to look for correlations that a single human analyst would never spot. The conversation continued for hours, with both sides learning from each other. The Veil were amazed by human adaptability and creative problem-solving. Humans were awed by Veil technology and their vast accumulated knowledge, but as the cultural exchange deepened, a troubling pattern emerged. Kithver pulled Webb and Sarah aside for a private conversation in his quarters. There is something you need to understand about the galaxy, he said, his tone grave. The Veil Collective has observed many species, but we are not the only observers. There are others who watch, and not all of them are peaceful. He displayed a star map showing dozens of different civilizations, some marked in green, others in yellow, and a few in red. These species in red are aggressive expansionists, Keffer explained. They conquer rather than coexist. We have been monitoring them for millennia, occasionally interfering in subtle ways to protect developing civilizations. You've been protecting others? Sarah asked, but you said you never interfered. We never made contact. Keth caressed, but we have sometimes provide indirect assistance, a warning transmitted anonymously, a technological hint left where it might be found, resources quietly delivered. Webb's eyes narrowed, and now that we've revealed you to the galaxy, those aggressive species know you exist. Worse, Valsha said, joining the conversation. They know we can be detected. Our greatest asset was our invisibility, and you have shown the galaxy how to find us. News travels fast, Kethver continued. Already, we have detected increased activity from several hostile species. They are testing their own detection systems, trying to replicate your methods. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. We've made you vulnerable. You have changed the balance of power in the galaxy. Kepfer acknowledged, but perhaps that change was inevitable, and perhaps it is not entirely negative. He looked directly at Webb. Your detection capabilities give you an advantage that few species possess. You can see what others cannot, find what others cannot find, and that makes you valuable allies. You're suggesting an alliance, Webb said. I am suggesting mutual benefit. Kepfer replied. We have knowledge and technology spanning 50,000 years. You have innovation, adaptability, and detection capabilities we cannot match together. We might be stronger than we are apart. What exactly are we talking about here? Sarah asked. Sharing technology? Joint research? Initially, yes, Kepfer said. But eventually, we may need to consider mutual defense. The galaxy is not as peaceful as you might hope. And there are species that would see both our civilizations as threats to be eliminated. Webb was quiet for a long moment, weighing the implications. Humanity had just learned they weren't alone. And now they were being told the galaxy was potentially dangerous. We'll need to take this to the world governments. He said finally, this isn't a decision I can make alone. We understand, Kepfer said, but please convey the urgency. We estimate you have perhaps 6 months before aggressive species begin probing Earth's defenses, testing your capabilities. Then we'd better get to work, Sarah said. If humanity is good at anything, it's preparing for fights we didn't know we were going to have. Kepfer made a gesture that the translator interpreted as a smile. I am beginning to understand why you survived long enough to find us, he said. Your species does not wait for the universe to come to you. You go out and meet it head on. Sometimes that's stupid, Webb admitted, but sometimes it's the only way to survive. The meeting concluded, with both sides agreeing to accelerate the technology sharing program and begin preliminary work on joint defense initiatives as Sarah prepared to return to Earth. She looked out at the stars and felt the weight of everything they had learned. The universe was bigger, stranger, and more dangerous than anyone had imagined, but humanity had allies now, and together they might just stand a chance. The news rippled across the galaxy like a shockwave through water, carried by quantum communications arrays and faster-than-light courier ships, the Veil Collective. The invisible watchers who had observed civilizations for 50 millennia had been found. More importantly, they had been found by a species that barely qualified as spacefaring by galactic standards in the Crevasse Empire, a sprawling domain of conquered worlds and subjugated species. War Master Thornak received the intelligence report with keen interest. Show me these humans, he commanded, his massive form shifting in the command throne. The holographic display showed Earth, its moon, and the primitive spacecraft that represented humanity's first steps into space. They are weak, his tactical advisor observed. Their ships cannot even leave their star system. They pose no threat. Then why did the Veil reveal themselves? Thornak rumbled. The Veil do not make mistakes, do not act without purpose. These humans found something that no one else has found in 50,000 years. He studied the data more carefully, his predatory intelligence analyzing what he saw. They detected the Veil through indirect means: gravitational distortions, neutrino shadows, quantum fluctuations, methods we have never considered because we assumed invisibility was absolute. Should we be concerned, War Master? Thornak was silent for a moment, weighing possibilities. The Veil protected the Shinari homeworld from our third expansion fleet 20 cycles ago. We never knew how they warned the Shinari of our approach. But they did. If these humans can find the Veil, they can find us. Surely not. War Master, our stealth technology is different from theirs. Test it. Thornak ordered. Send a probe to the human system. Let us see if they are as perceptive as the reports suggest. 6 weeks after first contact, the Joint Human Veil Research Initiative had already produced remarkable results. The Chun stood in the new orbital laboratory, watching human engineers and veil technicians work side by side on a prototype sensor array that combined the best of both technologies. "This is incredible," Dr. Martinez said, examining the quantum detection grid they had constructed. "We're seeing things we didn't even know existed. There's a whole spectrum of reality we've been blind to." The Veil have been generous with their knowledge. Sarah agreed. Almost too generous. Kethver approved technology transfers that his council initially wanted to restrict. Commander Webb joined them, his expression troubled. "We've got a situation developing," he said quietly. "Multiple sensor platforms are detecting something at the edge of the solar system. It's using stealth technology, but not Veil stealth." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. "How do you know it's not Veil?" "Because Kethver is standing next to me, and he's as concerned as we are," Webb replied. "He says the energy signature matches Kravasi Imperial technology." Within an hour, both human and Veil leadership had assembled. In the command center, Kethver studied the sensor data with visible worry. "This is a Kravasi scout probe," he confirmed. "They are testing your detection capabilities within days. They will know exactly what you can and cannot see." "Why would they care?" asked General Okafor, representing the African Union Defense Force. "The Kravasi are expansionists," Velsha explained. "They conquer developing worlds and absorb them into their empire. Earth would be considered a prime target. Rich in resources, technologically primitive, and isolated. Except we're not isolated anymore," Sarah pointed out. "We have allies now, which may be exactly why they are probing your defenses." Keffer said, "They want to know if we will defend you before they commit to an attack." Webb studied the tactical display showing the probe's trajectory. "Can we catch it?" "Not with human ships," Kethver replied. "But yes, we can intercept it. The question is whether we should." "Why wouldn't we?" General Okafor demanded. "Because intercepting it sends a message that we are actively protecting Earth," Kethver explained. "That could be interpreted as a defensive pact, which might accelerate Kravasi plans rather than deter them. But letting it gather intelligence on us seems equally dangerous." Sarah argued. Commander Webb made a decision. "We intercept it, and we send a very clear message that Earth is under protection. Maybe that deters them. Maybe it doesn't, but I'd rather fight from a position of strength than weakness." Cathvar nodded slowly. "Very well, but be prepared for the consequences. Kravasi respect strength, but they also resent being challenged." The Veil ship's Silent Wing intercepted the Kravasi probe 18 hours later, using weapons that Earth scientists were still struggling to understand. The probe's destruction was transmitted across multiple communication channels, ensuring that the Kravasi would receive the message loud and clearing the Kravasi Empire. War Master Thornak watched the recording of his probe's destruction and allowed himself a predatory smile. "The Veil have chosen to protect the humans," he observed. "This is useful information. Should we prepare an assault fleet, War Master?" "Not yet," Thornak said. "First, I want to understand these humans better. Send a diplomatic vessel. Let us see if they can be negotiated with before we decide if they must be conquered." 3 weeks later, a Kravasi diplomatic ship arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system, broadcasting peace intentions and requesting permission to approach. The rival threw both human and Veil leadership into intense debate. This could be a genuine diplomatic overture, Sarah argued in the council meeting. "We can't just assume every alien species is hostile. The Kravasi have conquered 47 different civilizations," Keffer countered. "Their diplomacy is typically a prelude to subjugation. They offer protectorate status, which is simply slavery with better marketing. But we have to at least hear what they have to say. Webb said, refusing to talk makes us look weak. And it closes off potential diplomatic solutions. The debate continued for hours. But eventually, a consensus emerged. Earth would receive the Kravasi delegation, but would do so from a position of strength. With Veil ships clearly visible in defensive positions, the Kravasi ambassador was a towering figure named Kalroth. His species evolved from pack hunters with multiple limbs and sensory organs that could detect electromagnetic fields. He entered the negotiation chamber flanked by 2 guards. His posture radiating controlled aggression. "Humans of Earth," he began, his translator rendering his clicks and growls into understandable speech. "The Kravasi Empire greets you and congratulates you on your recent advancement to the galactic stage. We appreciate the greeting." Ambassador Kalroth, General Okafor, replied, leading the human delegation. "Though we note that your probe was gathering military intelligence rather than extending friendship." Kalroth's sensory organs flickered with what might have been amusement. "Prudence is not hostility. We sought to understand your capabilities, as you would do in our position." "And what did you learn?" Commander Webb asked. "That you are more formidable than your technological level suggests," Kalroth admitted. "Your detection capabilities rival species far more advanced. And you have secured an alliance with the Veil Collective, impressive for a species that achieved spaceflight so recently." He leaned forward slightly. "The Kravasi Empire is prepared to offer Earth a position as a protected world. You would receive our military protection, access to our trade networks, and technological assistance in exchange for resource sharing, agreements, and cultural cooperation." Sarah spoke up before the military officers could respond. "That sounds like colonialism with extra steps." "Ambassador, we've seen that before in our own history, and we're not interested in repeating it." Kalroth's attention shifted to her. "You are the one who detected the Veil Dr. Sarah Chun, yes? Your reputation has spread across known space. I had help from millions of others," Sarah replied. "But yes, I developed the initial methodology. Then you understand the galactic reality." Kalroth said, "The universe is competitive species. Either adapt and align with stronger powers, or they are conquered by them. We offer alignment. The alternative is far less pleasant. Is that a threat?" Webb demanded. "It is a statement of reality." Kalroth replied calmly. "There are empires in this galaxy that make the Kravasi look merciful. Better to have us as allies than to face them alone." Kethver, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "The Veil Collective has never taken sides in galactic politics, but we will not stand aside and watch Earth be conquered or coerced into servitude. The Veil have no military force," Kalroth observed. "Your technology is advanced, but you have no warships, no armies, no capacity for sustained conflict. What will you do if we choose to ignore your objections?" "We have something better than warships," Sarah said suddenly, an idea forming in her mind. "We have the ability to find what cannot be found, and we're willing to share that with our allies." She looked at Kethvar, who understood immediately. The detection technology that found the Veil can find anything. Kethvar confirmed. Any stealth system, any hidden base, any concealed fleet, and we are prepared to deploy it in defense of Earth and other vulnerable species. Kalroth was silent. Processing this new information, the Kravasi Empire relied heavily on stealth for their military operations, using it to position forces before attacks and to hide strategic assets. If that advantage was neutralized, their entire tactical doctrine would need to be revised. "You would share your detection technology with others?" Kalroth asked.